you found a book that while you read it, you are loving it, you're savoring the story, and after reading it, you are like, I will sell my soul for reading this for the first time? There's gonna be a blend of categories. We will see sci-fi, adult fantasy, and young adult. And we kick off with Project Hail Mary. I loved that because the story, it's thrilling, the stakes are high, the writing style, it's optimistic. I almost teared up twice in this book, and overall, it was such a delight. And Project Hail Mary tells the story of her main character who wakes up one day in space. He is alone in this massive spaceship and he has no idea why he is there. So we will have a fair amount of time doing these flashbacks on him, understanding and gaining context again on why he is there and what is his mission. But let me tell you something, the stakes are very, very, very high, and he will need to navigate space in order to save the human race. And along the way he will be tested, first by loneliness, second by different communication barriers. Then we have Stories of Your Life and Others by Ted Chiang. It's a short but deep blend of sci-fi stories featuring the Arrival story, which was made a movie. I really, really loved this book because it is honestly mind-blowing. I do like sci-fi, but when things turn very, very, very into the mathematics, I tend to be a little bit lost, and this book was just the right kind of poison for me. This book will have 8 different stories that will be testing the limits of the human race and our capabilities. It's not necessarily a happy read or a cozy read, but more a deep and a very reflective read. It had some stories that I thought were phenomenal, and then others that I just thought were great. But nonetheless, the whole book, once I read it, I felt so different, so changed, and I really think that if you were waiting for something that it's sci-fi, that it's short, then this is definitely for you. And last but not least, within the sci-fi category, we have Dying of the Light by George R.R. Martin. Maybe if I reread this now, I won't be feeling the same. But back then, I remember these to be a beautiful world building. It had a little bit of romance, and honestly, I thought that the characters and the story itself was very well crafted. In a nutshell, this story talks about 2 characters that were kind of like bonded in the past. Time has passed by, they are separated, and one day one of these characters gets notice from the other because she needs help. But upon arriving, what he finds is that she is in this dying world where a lot of different creature lives, and that she has placed herself in a very complicated situation. I think I will do a reread. Let me know down below in your comments, what is the book that you haven't reread in a while because you are afraid of what you might find. But honestly, the feeling that it got me was such a beautiful state, and through this book I was a little bit more in love with the space. And then we continue with a book that was an absolute favorite. Then I reread it, and the experience was not as good, but I honestly will still kill for reading it for the first time. Elantris was the first book that Brandon Sanderson wrote, and also the first one that I read from him, and I honestly loved it so much. It is almost non-fantasy, so if you're new to fantasy and you want to find something that it's great in terms of world building, in terms of political stories, but it doesn't have much around magic, this is your kind of book. It goes a little bit slow, but it allows us to know better our characters, so it's pretty character driven. It talks about this sickness that every now and then affects people from this realm, and when people get this sickness, they are kind of like expelled to this city called Elantris. And we will kick off this story following 3 main points of view. One of them is for the prince that will get this sickness. The second one is of this woman that was supposed to marry the prince, and upon arriving she finds herself kind of like alone in this realm, and she will need to navigate the different political intrigues and kind of like survive and avoid a war. And then the third one, it's of this religious figure that also has a path on his mind, and he really wants to convert the people. Very fascinating, it is very inspiring, and honestly I remember ever so clearly
the ending of this book.
It was so fantastic. I really recommend. And talking about fantastic books, we have Sword of Kaigen. This is a nation-inspired story that completely captivated me because it is character driven, but it has one of the better crafted war scenes that I've seen in my life. And Sword of Kaigen will follow the story of two main characters. It will be a mother and a son, which is already kind of different in fantasy. It is also a standalone. It's a little bit chunky, not much, and it has a little bit of a different pace, but it honestly, it's a game changer. I loved it no end, and there's a lot of people here in booktube that are also loving it, so please give it a try. The story at its core, it's a story about an invasion, and within this realm we have these different cities, but Kaigen, it's the sword of it all. They are the only ones kind of like acting as a defense in case of a war, and although the society it's advancing and it's getting modernized, for them everything is still very medieval. They are the masters of elemental magic, and especially in this city they do ice magic, and we will be following this family that are kind of like the leaders of the city and how they will need to face a potential invasion. It's honestly heartbreaking, packs a punch to the heart. I sobbed so many times throughout this book. I've read it more than 1 year now, and I still find myself thinking about this book and wanting to find another book that I've loved as much as this one, so please give it a try. Then we move to series that are unconcluded yet but that are fantastic, and the first one is Legendborn. This is a young adult fantasy series that has a blend of different magics on it. It's pretty plot driven, but we will get to know really our main character. It has a slow burn, a little bit of a love triangle, and I was honestly captivated because in a nutshell, Legendborn will talk about our girl that has just lost her mom and she starts college. However, upon arriving, she sees that things are pretty weird and that magic, it's been performed. So she starts to dig a little bit, and she quickly finds that there's this secret society called Legendborn, that it's in reality an Arthurian society. So the science and the descendants from King Arthur are alive, are present, and are here, and they're opening a set of trials to get into the society because she suspects that the death of her mom was not an accident.
Chun, chun, chun.
Getting into the books that I love on the level, we have Fireborne, a young adult story that honestly seems adult fantasy. It's a story about a revolution, and I loved it because of the characters and the different decisions that they need to make. They are fleshed out in a way that you really can see yourself being them, and it's hard to read when you're reading yourself. Fireborne, it's a story about a revolution. It really doesn't have any magic, but it has these mythical creatures, the dragons, and the story talks about the consequences of an uprising. We will follow two different characters that are really different in terms of their backstory, and they are now best friends, and they are starting the set of tournaments. The characters are really nuanced and their motivations are really unique. We will have this society that was previously ruled by dragons and these dragon lords, and they were really mean with people, and then there was this revolution that killed all of the dragon lords, and now this new society it's ruling. It also has its flaws, and we are kind of like living through that, how a new regime it's applied and how we need to move through that, and it's this eternal dilemma of what was best, and that really changes. So it's an interesting read. The release of the third book, it's just around the corner, so there's no excuse, and I really recommend it. And last but not least, we have Oathbringer, this chunky boy here by Brandon Sanderson. This is book 3 in the Stormlight Archive series, so this series overall, it's kind of like my best. And I loved this book because the characters are outstanding. Once that you get to know them, you will see how they start creating a mark in your heart, in your life. You will care for them deeply. And of course, Brandon Sanderson writing style, it's phenomenal. It's always this blend of character and plot-driven stories with these very emotional endings. Like, last 200 pages of his books are always kind of like a crazy mad journey, and Stormlight Briefly, it's a story about a war of different species. We'll kick off the story with the king of one of these kingdoms dying, and as a result, different species are now in this massive war. First book, it's mainly starting that war, and then the story will unfold and unfold and unfold. Oathbringer was the most emotional for me character that we follow in Oathbringer. It's one of my favorites, and I thought that the arc that the character had was outstanding and just so sad, so emotional, and well, great ending. And that was it for today. Let me know down below in the comments what are those books that you'd sell your soul to read for the first time. Give it a thumbs up if you like this video, click that subscription button, and I hope to see you soon. Happy reading!